Welcome to She Chose Joy with Melanie, where we discuss all things love, freedom, wellness, and joy. I'm your host, Melanie Foote-Davis, also known as the Soul Whisperer. I'm just so excited to get into today's topic. It's one that is a bit taboo and a bit provocative for some. And the guest that's going to be sharing her wisdom with us today is none other than Dr. Carmen McNeil. She's a facilitator, educator, and period of empowerment guide. And she's committed to helping girls and women understand how impressive they really are. Affectionately known as Dr. Carmen, she holds a PhD in psychology, is a tenured professor, as well as a graduate of the California Black Women's Health Project Advocacy Training Program. Dr. Carmen has been a featured speaker for conferences, women's organizations, and educational institutions. She's coming to us with 12 years of teaching, counseling, and training into supporting power parents and community influencers raising Black girls, facilitating empowerment camps and workshops, and helping to lead the culture shift around menstruation via the power to the period and Daring Daddies of Daughters workshops. So let's get into it. Here's Dr. Carmen. Hello, Miss Carmen. Welcome to She Chose Joy with Melanie.
Thank you so much, Melanie. It's such a pleasure to be here sharing this time and space with you.
I have been super excited about this conversation. I find it provocative and even soul stirring, right? So I can't wait. I know you guys want to know what we're talking about, and we'll tell you in a minute. But first, let me just check in with my sister and see how she's doing. So, what are you excited about this week?
Oh, so many things. I'm in the process of completing a project called the Period Stories Project, where I am interviewing boys, men, girls, women of a variety of ages, because we all have a period story. And it is so exciting hearing people's stories. And I have more bookings, more interviews to do. So that is just absolutely thrilling. So that's probably what I'm most excited about this week.
That is so cool. So for you listeners, you probably caught that hint. That's actually what we're going to be talking about today is our monthly cycles, like our periods, and how to really tap into resources that help us feel empowered about it, that this isn't a dirty conversation. Speaking of period stories, I'm sure you probably have one of your own. And I thought about this when I was thinking about us getting together. I thought about a time when my mom sent me to go get some sanitary napkins, and I was in line, and then I saw this boy from school.
Yes. What were the emotions?
I got out of line. Fear, anxiety, embarrassment even, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't necessarily say shame, but I believe it really was like embarrassment. And it wasn't as much about me having a cycle as it was about him knowing what kind of pads I use. For some reason, that seemed like some very sensitive information that I didn't want to be out around the school. Like, yeah, I saw Melanie and she was in there buying some, wait a minute, what was the brand back then? I don't even remember because I haven't had to buy any lately.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, and it was so funny because I remember coming back without them. And I told my mom I didn't get them because I saw somebody from school. And her response I felt was harsh at the time, but I later got the message. And she says, well, you're going to need to go back and get them because if you don't, you won't have any.
Mm,
And I'm thinking,
mhm.
how could she be so mean? Isn't she sensitive to what I just experienced? Um, but in hindsight, knowing my mother as I know her, it was kind of her way of saying that this is a part of your life. Take ownership of it and go back and get what you need,
Mhm, mhm,
right?
mhm.
And that I'm not going to coddle you with this because this is a part of your experience.
Right.
So, what's yours? Do you have one you like to share?
Yeah, I have lots. And thank you so much, for sharing that because that fear, that anxiety, the embarrassment, not wanting other people to know, that is a very, very common experience. Those are common emotions. And that's one of the reasons that I'm on this journey of dismantling the miseducation of menstruation because those feelings aren't necessary when we fully take ownership of what this whole thing is about. So I just really, really appreciate you for sharing that. One of my period stories, because we all have several, likely. But I remember being in high school and we were at a friend's house. There were lots of people over. I was there with my boyfriend, and it was a lot of guys there. For some reason, it seemed to be more guys than girls. And I am, I grew up being very, very quiet and observant, of group dynamics. So I'm in my element, which means being quiet and observing the group dynamics. So all of a sudden, one of the guys there who he's just sort of known for being kind of crass. But he asked me, what's wrong? Because a lot of times when people are quiet, there's an assumption that something's wrong. So he asked me what's wrong. And I was like, oh, nothing. And he said, of course, this is a house full of people. Oh, well, it must be that time of the month. And my heart sank for a lot of different reasons. One was, so there is this assumption out there that, the only reason that even if a girl or woman is having a problem, that reason is automatically ascribed to her being on her period.
Yeah.
That in itself, is problematic. So that and I was embarrassed, when he said that to me in front of all these people, and I had no comeback. Now I would, but then, as a teenager in high school, I had nothing, to come back with, and that was disappointing as well. Like, whoa, what do I say? I'm looking at my boyfriend to thinking he gonna defend me, but he's probably thinking the same way that, that the other guy was. So I definitely felt that nobody, that I felt alone, that nobody had my back, with that. So that's just one of my period stories.
Wow, I'm just thinking about that and with thinking of a like that desire to have your boyfriend speak up for you and then really understanding, like I wouldn't have probably thought about it then, but knowing now he probably didn't have the language or the education himself to know how to respond to that. That feeling alone, when you said that, it prompted me to think. I was trying to tap into a memory where I saw sisters coming together to defend each other around that as a teen, and I can't think of any, right? Even with me, now that I'm thinking about it, I remember being in the girls' locker room, after gym class, you have to take showers and all these other things. And I remember somebody saying, ew, somebody's on their period. I can smell it, and whoever it was probably embarrassed and feeling alone in that moment. And I remember like looking around, like feeling for that person, but also not feeling like I knew what to do in that moment. And nobody said anything. There were a couple of giggles, but even the giggles that may feel like they're joining in also could have been from their own discomfort and embarrassment. But laughter is sometimes we associate it with them being a part of the ridicule, but it's not always the case. Sometimes it's their nerves.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And so, there's so many different directions we could go with. So I just absolutely
follow your lead on that.
I just absolutely love it. So first, you're right. Going back to my period story that I just shared, my boyfriend probably didn't have the language, and he, like a lot of boys today and men today, really don't understand what the menstrual cycle is. So there is this piece of the unknown. And then with the piece that you just shared about your experience, in the locker room, and that comment that was made, that just is a testament to how we're being socialized around menstruation, around this cycle, that it is something dirty, that it is something nasty, there's something that has to be taken care of. You got to fix it, and that is a part of our socialization. And so certainly, yes, hygiene is important. We're not going to, we're not knocking that, but there's a lot of other factors that I think we're missing in terms of fully taking ownership, of our cycles. And that's that sacred piece.
Yeah. Ooh, I want to get into that part. Before I do, with this other thing, when I was thinking about shame or embarrassment around it, is to this day, when you go in the ladies' room, there's a sign about not putting your sanitary products in the toilet. And here are my thoughts on that. So I'm open to hearing yours. Do you believe that that is also tied to the embarrassment? Because even though there's a container for it, people still aren't comfortable using it where they're trying to flush it down the toilet. It's almost like there's this thing out there that says they're going to know it was yours, even though it's a public restroom that hundreds and thousands of people are using, right? But that whole, that shame, that guilt, that embarrassment, that whatever that is, that will still lead some of us to flush it in the toilet instead of placing it in its container. Like, people are going to know it was you.
And that's also a part, because there's an element of secrecy that is woven into this as well. And although I had not even myself made that connection that you just made around still, you're not supposed to flush, but I'm gonna flush anyway because I don't want it coming back to me, but that's definitely a part of that secrecy and wanting it to, I'm gonna get rid of all the evidence, so that nobody will know that I'm on my period. I don't want anyone to know, but with secrecy comes anxiety. Whenever you're trying to keep a secret, there's automatically going to be some anxiety and fear of people knowing or finding out, right? And so I agree that all of that is woven in together.
Yeah. And I'm going to come to the sacred part in a minute. But I'm even thinking about my mom wasn't ashamed or embarrassed about teaching me about my body. She definitely did that. She got me books and things like that. So here's the funny part. I don't know if it's funny or sad. It's funny at this point, but when I think about it, it's pretty sad. So the books were very old, right? Because my parents had children over a 21-year time frame. So they were probably the same books that my sisters
who are like 16 years older than me and 18 years, so they weren't updated. But the conversation was open and she gave me information to read, in which I did to prepare me for it. And I wasn't embarrassed or ashamed when I had my first cycle. The part that's really sad is I used some of those same books with my daughter. What was I thinking? If you listen, Trinity, I'm so sorry I did that to you. So again, the conversation was open, but what was I thinking that I didn't go get some updated information? Anyway, I just thought I'd share that.
Well, first, Melanie, I just want to offer some kudos to your mom. Okay, kudos to your mom, because offering you those books and talking with you, preparing you, that's more than a lot of parents do. So I just want to give a shout out to your mom and also a shout out to you. Yes, you had some outdated books, but you had the mindset to say, okay, I need to educate my children about this. Here are some resources. And that's more than a lot of parents do. I was recently at an event of educators. And I was talking with a parent about my project, and her daughter is now 21 or something like that. And she said to me that she said nothing to her daughter about her period, nothing to prepare, right? Like nothing at all. And so unfortunately, that's also a common experience. So she said nothing beforehand. She said nothing after her daughter started. There was no communication at all. So, and I'm an advocate for couching this in a way that's positive, because how we perceive a thing is going to impact how we experience a thing.
Absolutely. Can you say that one more time?
Yes, how we're thinking about something, how we're holding it in our heads, in the fancy word of psychology, our schema, which just means our understanding about it, right? How we're thinking about it, how we're perceiving it is going to first impact our emotions about it, which are then going to impact how we experience whatever that thing is, right? So it's our thoughts, our emotions, and then our behavior. And so as parents, when we have girls who have not started menstruating yet, I'm going to change that, when we start preparing them in a way that is positive, in a way that is celebratory, in a way that is very, very special, so that, the girls, they look forward to their menarche, that's the technical term for their first period. So they look forward to menarche with excitement and anticipation, because they're going to be stepping into, a part of their yummy sacredness, And so that is a much different experience than, lots of the other people that I've spoken with and known over the years who either had no communication at all with by their parents, or the communication was, now you could get pregnant, so you need to keep your legs closed. And that was how it was couched.
Like the only conversation was about if you missed it, like don't miss that period, because that's right. Mean the baby is coming, right?
Right.
So it could mean a lot of other things, but that was one of those. Yeah, that it. Thank you for offering me some grace with my old books for my daughter, because we used to read them like a bedtime story, right? Read a chapter a night at bedtime and that kind of thing, and she could ask questions. But the images in it still had the belts. That's how old they were.
Okay.
But yeah, like really, even today, when we hear a lot about conversation around them are still negative, even if I don't think people necessarily realize it's coming across as a negative experience, because men aren't the only ones that say, oh, she must be on. It must be that time of month. But women, as we experience it, we often speak of it as if it's a curse or a bad thing, like, no, because I'm going to be, on that month or what what have you. And the truth is, for some of it, it is a painful experience too. So I can also see that perspective too, because some people have horrible migraines,
Sure.
really intense abdominal cramps and all of those things. But yeah.
Yeah. And so, certainly outside of those pretty severe, experiences that some women have physiologically, there are, again, just so many ways to couch the positivity around this. And I will say, although I'm blanking on the titles, there are some really good current books, more up to date. And some of them even have, where the imagery, represents girls a variety of skin tones. So that's, another thing that we need to pay attention to. So I just wanted to put that out there as well. But what I have learned from working with girls is that the adult women need healing too. They need healing too around this. So, first I started working, just with the girls. And then I realized, well, wait a minute, I think the moms need to be, in on this too, so they can be going through, this process together, because, I'd be working with the girls and, having a great experience, and they're, coming out empowered with their, period power kits. And then their mom says, oh Lord, I can't wait till my period over. And I'm like, no. No. So we have to watch how we're talking about it. But the grown women need healing and education and dismantling of that miseducation as well.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's a part of it. It's a part of our healing process in general. Like that is also a part of being a woman, and our association with our bodies and how we view our bodies and the power in it. And so let's tell me more about it being sacred.
Isn't that yummy?
Yes. Oh, so yummy. Me.
Well, so there are so many ways that our cycle, because it is indeed a cycle, is sacred. So way back when, in ancient Greeks' time, they came up with this term which has now been translated into menstruation, which really meant the moon. And the power, of the moon. So it was thought that, girls and women had this power, right? So it was a positive thing that was connected somehow to, to the power of the moon. And so there's, lots of talk now about, women's cycles being in sync, with the moon, and whether you agree with that or not. It is definitely a cycle. So some people in their minds believe that the cycle is just when they're menstruating, that the cycle is just when they are flowing, right? So you'll hear language like, oh, I'm on my cycle. Well, the cycle is ongoing. It's not, that's just one phase of the 4-part, cycle. And so one of the reasons that it's sacred is because just like there are 4 seasons in the year, right? Winter, spring, summer, fall. Our cycles are in many ways in sync with these seasons. And so it's important to understand what season you're in terms of your cycle. Okay. So, and this is where it really starts to get yummy and take ownership when we understand that it is actually a cycle. So for example, when we're actually flowing, when we're menstruating, right, that can be equated to winter. All right. And so
let me just pause for a moment.
Oh, yeah.
For any of the listeners who are listening now, if you don't have a notepad or something to capture, get it now, because she is like Dr. Carmen is really educating us on here. I have my pen and pad, a whole serious notepad to to learn about my period, which feels like for the first time. So take a moment to go grab your pen and paper or pull out your notes in your iPhone or whatever it is, because this is yummy here.
And thank you, Melanie.
Okay.
Thank you so much for that pause, because I get so
Yeah.
excited about this. I can start talking fast. And so thank you for that
Yeah.
pause. Yes.
So, okay, so you said we have 4 seasons. Just
Okay.
like the 4 seasons, as far as the weather is concerned, we have seasons with our cycles.
Absolutely. So let's start with when we're menstruating, when we're actually flowing.
Okay.
So that is one phase of the entire cycle, right? And so that phase can be equated to winter. And in winter, we tend to stay indoors more often. We tend to sleep a little bit more, get a little more rest. Some women can really, really benefit from increasing their self-care, their journaling, their self-reflection, whatever it is, taking the longer showers or, spending more time alone. Okay. So the next phase is what we call the follicular phase. Okay. And all of these fancy terms just have to do with like changes in hormones. So we won't go through all that part, but the follicular phase is equated to spring. And so spring, we love it when spring comes, right? It's like new beginnings, a rebirth, I'm bouncing out. And so that's a time, you may start socializing more, doing more things, connecting more with your loved ones or what have you. The next phase is ovulation. Okay. And ovulation is connected or associated with summertime. So summertime, woo, we out and about, we're basking in the sun. Our energy level tends to be higher, right? Which can lead to more productivity. So, when you want to get things done, you may want to reserve them for your ovulation phase, because there's a lot of activity, a lot of stuff getting done during that summer phase. And then finally, the last phase is the luteal phase. And this is associated with fall or autumn. And when we think about the seasons of fall or autumn, there's a lot of changes, right? You think about the leaves changing colors, brown, yellow, all of that. So there's a lot of hormonal changes happening in the luteal phase, in this fall phase. So, because there's a lot of changes going on, this may be a time to be a little more still, be a little more patient with ourselves and a little more patient with other people. Have a little more compassion for ourselves and for others, because we're getting ready to go back into winter, right? And so when we can, what I call, sync our lives with our cycles, then that is when we're fully beginning to take ownership of this and realize how sacred it is, right? So we, people who menstruate, have the gift, obviously, of procreation, right? So there's that gift that's in there. And so not only are we talking about the possibility of bearing children, but we're also talking about creation in general, right? So whatever that is for you, if it's drawing for you, if it's coming up with a new app, if it's thinking of creative ways to communicate with people, all of us have different ways that we are creators. And so really, beginning to tap into that, and also to claim our space to take care of ourselves, so to be able to say to our family members, I need an hour of just me time, just alone time. So y'all go do what you're going to do and leave me alone. Don't come in this room unless the house is on fire, And so in doing that, we're teaching others how to, that our self-care is important to us, and that we're asking you to honor it as well. So those are just some of the ways that it's really, really sacred.
Ooh, this is good. This is good. We're not going to get all of that. I want to ask you in an hour. When this ends, we're going to be scheduling your comeback.
Okay.
I'm just going to put that out there right now, if you
Yes.
would be so kind to do that.
Yes.
This is, I never thought about it in the 4 phases. I did not know. I'm just going to go ahead and be transparent, guys. I didn't know the technical names for it, any of those things. And so you are not only helping to educate the moms and daughters, nieces, granddaughters, goddaughters, all of that, but you invited men into the conversation.
Yes, yes.
How
And
does that happen? That conversation looks like, right?
so one of the things that I know, and there's some, literature out there. I am, a psychologist, so I read a lot of stuff.
Right.
But one of the things that I know is that there's often a fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot, so I'm going to start with boys first. So a lot of, and well, this applies to men too, but let's just start with boys. So a lot of times,
Some.
right, some, yeah.
Some are still boys, very boy-like.
Right. That's another topic. So there are some boys who, when they don't understand something, they will joke about it. They will tease about it. Okay. So a lot of the period shaming, not all, as we've seen earlier with your earlier story about the locker room, but some of the period shaming out there comes from boys who have no clue about what's going on. And the fact that, it seems kind of like mysterious, like, what is this? I mean, because when you think about it, a woman's flow is the only time that people bleed when there's not nothing wrong. So usually we associate bleeding with you got a cut, or you were in a fight, you got beat up. We've seen all the war images, it's a very negative association with blood. So that's a part of, the issue as well. So in some people's minds, it's like, well, how could you be bleeding and not be something wrong with you?
Right.
I don't understand. It doesn't compute, in my schema, about blood. So because of this fear of the unknown, it is really important to educate boys who are going to grow up into men, to educate boys just as much as we're educating girls about the menstrual cycle, about these phases, about how to support their sisters. In one of the interviews that I conducted for my Period Stories project, I was talking to a mom. She's 61, her son is now in his 30s. But when he was in middle school, she had done a lot of education for her son. When he was in middle school, he noticed, they were on the recess or whatever, and he noticed that a girl had started her period. So she had experienced some leakage. And so he approached her very, very lovingly, compassionately, and walked her to the nurse's office. She told that story. Yes, I did that. Yes, my heart was so filled, right? So we need more boys of this particular mindset to be supportive, not, denigrating something that you don't understand, right? And so when it comes to men, there are a lot of men, girl dads, right? There are a lot of fathers with daughters who want to understand it. They genuinely want to, but have no clue how to understand it, no clue where to begin. Some of them feel like it's not their place, but they want to support their daughters. They want to support their baby girls, right? And so initially, when beginning to talk with men, some of them are nervous, because they don't want to say the wrong thing, they again, everybody has a period story. So I was talking to one man in his 60s, and a part of his period story was he reflected back to middle school, and they had pamphlets, about puberty. And during the class, somebody was passing around a pamphlet unbeknownst to the teacher, like behind the teacher's back. And so the pamphlet, as it was getting passed around about puberty and menstruation and all that, ended up on his desk as the teacher turned around. And so she said, "What are you doing with that? You're not supposed," and this a female teacher, "What are you doing with that? You're not supposed to have that. Give that to me. That doesn't belong to you. You're not supposed to be reading this stuff." So, as a middle school boy, you think he's 13 years old, somewhere around in there. He was shocked. He was stunned, and so that was a part of his story, his socialization, his learning, was that he was not supposed to be involved in that particular conversation. And so when we have more men understanding this and how to support, their partners or spouses, how to support their nieces, how to support their daughters, and how to educate their sons to do the same, we will really experience a magnificent transformation of ideology. Ideology just means thinking, right? So we'll experience a major positive transformation in thinking about this, which means that everybody, well, a lot of people will have more positive experiences around menstruation.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. Like, I'm just thinking about how many lives are being shifted from the work that you're doing around this one topic alone.
Yes.
And as you were saying that, and you mentioned girl dads, I was sitting here thinking about the fact that I have sons too, and I don't have the conversation about that with them. And so even if you're not a girl dad, if you're raising a young man, it's still necessary because they are exposed to women and could very much be an advocate, just like the young man in your period story shared. Like, how powerful would that be? And the thing is about that story that stood out for me, well, it was several things, but one of the things I was thinking about is how many times someone does, like they do happen to realize that, okay, it's starting and they're in the classroom and afraid to stand up, afraid to ask for someone to walk behind you, or you're grabbing a jacket. And I actually have a story that someone shared with me about, this was an adult that was upset with another personnel at school because they were telling the young lady to take the jacket off because it wasn't a part of the uniform to wear your jacket around the waist. So she wasn't within the guidelines of uniform policy. But what was happening was she had soiled her clothing and was trying to cover as best, like that was how she knew to take care of herself. And then to have someone in position of power try to force her to remove it. Yeah. So I'm just thinking, how amazing would it have been if that guy had been there for her, right? We can't make that happen, but we can. You are creating those opportunities with the work that you do, so that someone doesn't have to, which goes back to you feeling alone. Someone else doesn't have to feel alone in those moments when a very natural and sacred moment is happening.
Right. And I'm so glad that you raised this around school, because some of the shame and discomfort, a lot of it is happening at school. So one thing that I want to mention, there are a couple things, but one thing that I want to mention is that a lot of girls are afraid to go to school when they're on their periods, right? So it's documented that a lot of girls miss school when they're on their periods. They'll just stay home. Another thing is that some of the shaming happens from the adults, from the teachers, or from the coaches. So when a girl does muster the courage to get up and go ask to go to the bathroom, some teachers are saying, well, why do you need to go? What? Oh, no, that's not okay. So we want to give our daughters language around that. Or some of the coaches, I was reading a story about a girl on a volleyball team, and she had started her period during the game and had asked the coach to be excused from the game to go to the bathroom, and he told her to get back out there and play. So there are so many, unfortunately, of these stories. So the faculty and staff at schools need to be educated as well. And then also, you know, like I said, it's important to feed girls, to arm them with language.
Yes.
And it's tougher when you, like you said, when you're talking to an authority figure. But that's important as well.
But that was one of the other things my mom always told me too. She's like, when you need to excuse yourself and go to the restroom for whatever reason, you're told no, you go anyway and let me deal with them. You go take care of you, let me take care of you. Bill was basically the best. So I always felt empowered to go if I was told no, because I knew my mom had my back.
Yes. Kudos to mama. Kudos to mama.
You know, so, but yeah, like I can, again, is that what we want to blame it on kids a lot of times, but as adults, it's really important for us to be open to new conversations and new perspectives, because we can be just like, as adults, you hear people talk about these kids today and these, like I hear many people blaming kids for so many things. And it's really important for us to take ownership on how we contribute.
Right. Yeah, because as adults, we're primary socializers of the kids.
And we need to take ownership over that. That's really important. Oh, wait, I just had, it was something else you said you had something else to say. I'm trying to think. I know it's so much information, it's so much you want to share. And it's okay because you're coming back. Let me see what notes I had.
Okay.
And let me just come back and thank you again, because when I found out this was the work you do, I knew that I wanted to learn more. And then when I got to meet you and have a conversation with you, it's like, wow, like I didn't even know I wanted to have this conversation until I saw it through you. But then after meeting you, your energy, your passion about it made you like, it was just like the perfect situation. Like I'm just so grateful that you are taking this on. And I feel deeply honored that I get to play a role in helping to share this message.
Yes. Well,
you know, I do, like, call me selfish or whatever, but I am really excited to contribute to the solution.
Yes, yes. And thanks, going back and forth, mutual thanks. So, because we need more conversations like this. We need to talk about how to set up our girls for success. So, you know, some of the ways, and we've talked about it a little bit, but, you know, helping, creating what I call a period power kit. You know, for her to keep in her backpack. I have a little sample of, one here, something that's a little zippered pouch that says queen on it, or beautiful or awesome. But she's going to have a couple of, pads in there. If she's using tampons, she would have a couple of those in there. She would have some flushable wipes in there. She's going to have a clean pair of panties and a Ziploc bag in there in case she needs to change out. So the dirty pair go in the Ziploc bag, right? And even Thermacare. Thermacare is a brand that sells like those heat patches. Well, they have them for menstruation, and it fits over your uterus, really, but you're putting it, over your abdomen. So, and no one can see it. It's underneath your clothes. So you can have one of those in there so that she feels equipped, so that she knows what to do, when she starts her period unexpectedly, because frankly, the first couple years of the cycle is really sporadic, as the body is trying to get its groove, it's really, really sporadic. So having that period power kit is like, okay, I know what to do, to take care of myself. And then also, as I was talking about, couching this in terms of it being something positive, particularly for girls that haven't started menstruating yet, and even for those who have, it's not too late, you can still go back. But for those who haven't started menstruating yet, when they do, it's time to have a sacred ceremony.
I was going to ask about that.
Yes. There are so many cultures around the world that have a huge celebration. Men and women are involved. There's a feast, the girl is, dressed up in all of her, ethnic garb and jewels and colors, and she is the center, of attention. So just imagine, an 8-year-old knowing that that's what's going to be coming for her, when she starts, this ceremony to really acknowledge her sacredness and her yumminess and the magic of menstruation, and her bodies. And so that period power kit is key. Having some sort of celebration, whether it's, one-on-one, it could be a small group with her friends, it could just be family, everyone can create whatever they want, whatever suits their fancy, but having something to mark that phase or that stage or that period of her journey to womanhood, right? Because that's where she headed. But it's important that we mark these phases, that we mark these stages on the journey to adulthood is really, really, really important. And then it's important, I think, to create what I call a magical moon box. And so could be any type of box, but in it, there might be a notepad, there might be a pen, there might be a lavender roll-on essential oil, you could put on inside your wrist, because lavender is very calming. When I create them, I put those little beads in there. And so they can wear them around their wrist, around their ankle, around their neck, when they're menstruating, to remind them, of how sacred they are. And so there's so many things that you could put in there, and, it could be individualized, but so the magical moon box, she keeps at home. And so, at the different phases of her cycle, or when she's actually flowing, she's going to get out that box. She's going to journal or draw, doodle about how she feels, take it into the bathroom with her. She could put her favorite scents in there, whatever. So that's important. And the other thing that sets up our girls and women, frankly, for success is tracking your periods. So that's how you know, or it helps you to know about which phase of the cycle that you are in. And so there are period tracker apps out there designed for tweens and teens. So it's age appropriate. And there's some out there for adults, for grown folks as well. But those can be really, really helpful to help track. And if you don't want to do that, you just get a calendar out and mark it on the calendar, or put it in your phone or wall calendar or what have you. So those are some of the things that will really set them up for success.
Yeah, what I envision, like this little sisterhood, like where you also have your community, like your peers that gather around and support you during that time. You support each other during those times. So I can see them, like when they're wearing their bracelet, they know that this is a time when I may need you to lean on you a little more, or all of these different little pieces. My mind is all over the place. I'm here, but I'm also in creative mode, right? When I'm hearing you, I'm like, ooh, Therma
Thermacare.
Care needs to be a sponsor.
Yes.
All of these other things are going through, like all of the things that help to create your moon box and your what is it called? The period
Power kit.
period power kit, all of those things. And like, we need to reach out to them for sponsorship to help sponsor these events, the products, all of that. But this is another conversation. But I just want you to know all of that was going through my head. It's like, how many more people can we get to rally around this movement? Because it is so incredibly important.
Yes. And thank you for saying that, because I would love help in that area. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, it's not my forte, but it's just, I'm the idea person. It's other people.
That's what we need. We need the idea people. Yes.
Yes. I stay in that land quite often. Oh, this is just so. I'm sitting here thinking about what's in the notes. Yeah, the one thing I didn't ask you too, though, before we wrap, is how did you get here? What was your journey to the decision to take this on as your personal liberation project, if you will?
Yes, and thank you for naming it that.
Mhm.
So my journey has actually been a lifelong journey, although I didn't know it early on. And I say that because, growing up, as I mentioned, I'd always been quiet, the one who observes. And in elementary school, high school, my friends would tell me how easy it was to be able to talk to me because I listened well. I did a lot more listening, than I did talking. So, and there was something about my energy that they felt comforted. They felt calmed, and they felt, the warmth of that. So I bring all that to this work because it's a taboo topic, we need all of that, right? So that's going back to high school. I remember before I was moving to Boston, I born and raised in California, but I was going to go to Boston to complete my master's in counseling psychology. And so I moved to Boston. I didn't know, anybody there. And I ended up meeting a woman from California. I'm from the Bay Area, but she was from Southern California, and we just happened to meet in Boston. And she invited me to her church. And I said, yes, I'm going to go. I don't really know anybody. So this will be a great, time to meet people and, maybe, have a new church home or what have you. So I'm a guest at the church, and I'm sitting probably the third row back. And it just so happened that there was a guest preacher that day who happened to be a woman. She was so engaging. She was fiery. I was hanging on every word. So she's she walking back and forth, doing her sermon, and she stopped and she turned and looked directly at me. And she told me to come to the front. And I was like, I was shocked because I'm a guest. I had never been there before. She is a guest, had, never been there before. So I was obedient. As scared as I was obedient. I got up, I walked to the front. She laid hands on me and told me that I was going to be ministering to girls and women. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I didn't really know what my focus was. I'm young, in my 20s or what have you, but I received it. And always, remembered that. And since then, I've done lots around self-care, focusing on women, on adults. So speaking at a variety of places, doing self-care workshops. And then it occurred to me, so what if we start this education earlier? What if we start this education sooner? right? Then we will have, all of these empowered women, who aren't having to, as adults, learn how to take care of themselves. So in my process of teaching psychology classes, introduction to psychology of women, I started reading more and more and immersing myself in this area of menstruation, because I noticed that even in the textbooks, the only thing that's mentioned in your basic Psych 101 textbook or your development textbook is that this is what menarche is. Remember, menarche is just a fancy word for your first period. This is what it is, and this is around the age that it starts, and that's it. And I was like, well, wait a minute, there's a lot more going on. This is psychology. We're supposed to also address emotion, we're supposed to address thinking. And in my survey, a variety of textbooks, it's not there. So I started thinking, this is a shame. This is a disservice that we are not including the full picture of menstruation, not even in our textbooks. And certainly it's not happening in a lot of, just your everyday conversations. So that's how I began to take this on. And I started just casually talking to people about it. And they said, whoa, it would be so amazing if I had you when I was 13. And even in the workshops that I just initially started doing with girls, after the girls would sign off, it would be just the adults, and the adult women had conversations. Well, what's that menstrual cup? Like, what's that? How do I use that? Because we would talk about all the various ways to collect and dispose of your flow, and pads and tampons are not the only ways. So there is just so much that contributed throughout my life to how I got here today. So that's the short story, even though it was kind of long.
No, it was perfect. And it's interesting how certain things, so like there are many people who read the same books you did, but it spoke to you in some way. And yeah, it stood out for you because you were assigned to this assignment.
Yes.
And like hearing, and not just hearing, but feeling your passion about it is just a reminder of what happens when you say yes to something with no attachment to where it's going, even if it's something that seems taboo.
Yes.
And what I made up about the textbooks is that there also was some shame and discomfort around talking about it. So it's like, okay, we mentioned it, our job, we can check that box. And go from there.
Yes.
Oh, so much. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything here. We talked about inviting the boys, the magical moon box. Yes. Yeah, it was interesting, even when I was looking for a quote or something that we could maybe bring to the conversation. It was interesting trying to find a quote, because even some of those had like negative undertones. Or like defensiveness or any of those things. Even though some of them were pretty funny too. Right? Like one of them says, to guys who undermine the strength of a woman, everything you can do, I can do it bleeding.
Ashe.
Yeah. And it says that my superpower is being able to bleed for 7 days without dying. And then there was the menstruation, menopause, mental breakdown. Do you notice how all women's problems begin with men? But yeah, just trying to find, and then there is one that said menstruation is just a way of your body letting go of something it no longer needs.
Which is true. That's the truth.
And then the other one was, let's make it clear, menstruation isn't dirty.
Yes, love that. Love all of those. Thank you for sharing those.
Yeah, I found those on a site called what was it? ourmindfullife.com. Yeah, because I just Googled like quotes on menstruation, right? Quotes on women's menstrual cycle to see what would come up, to see what I could find. Um, this has been lovely. I am so excited that you were here with us. What are you most grateful for in this moment?
Well, again, I am certainly grateful to be having this conversation with you. You know, the more we normalize this, the better, right? So the more conversations about this, positive conversations about this on, you know, various podcasts and in other types, you know, of social media, positive writing, we can make, you know, lots of positive impacts. So I am grateful for that. I am grateful for you and how you show up and your energy and you're affirming this work. So thank you so much for that. So I am grateful for both of those things.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk more about how we can collab, you know, what you need from me to help support this, because it really is an important topic. And the other thing I always ask when She Chose Joy with Melanie is, how do you choose joy and choose it consistently?
Well, yes, that's a great question. And I feel like for me, that I am constantly making joy choices, right?
Mhm.
Every day, sometimes every minute, I am making joy choices. So the first thing to acknowledge is that it is a choice. So choose is a key word in that phrase there, right? If she chose joy. And that meaning that we have power in our choices and we have power in the experience of joy. So there are lots of ways that I choose joy. So a couple of them are just how I book my calendar. I tend to not book things back to back because I don't want to be ripping and running and, you know, in a rush from one thing to the next, because what serves me best is to have a little downtime, you know, in between my appointments. One of the other ways that,
Yeah.
one of the other ways that I choose joy is who I surround myself with, you know, who I'm exchanging energy with. You know, there are some folks who deplete my energy that I want to limit the amount of time that I spend with them. There are some folks that really fortify my energy and I want to spend more time with them. And I'm realistic. And not that I have to say to that person, you deplete my energy, but
Right. That even takes energy to do that, right?
and also, you know, recognizing those things that, you know, really, really feed my spirit, my grounding. So I have learned just really over the past year or so that it's important for me to get outside, to put my bare feet on the ground, for me to have some sun rays, you know, on me, just 20 minutes a day. That is really, really important for me. So I choose joy that way, where sometimes I have to put it on my calendar. So in between these things, I'm going outside of my back patio for 20 minutes. I'm gonna set my timer. I'm gonna listen to some meditative music and catch these sun rays. So those are some of the ways, you know, that I choose joy.
But those sun rays are looking good on you, darling, because you are glowing.
Thank you.
It's funny because right before this my call before this one, we were talking about the importance of connection with nature and having your feet like really feel the earth in those grounding activities and how it can contribute to our overall well-being. So yes, how can listeners, because I know you all are like all in, you're probably just leaning in. And if you're like me, you couldn't write fast enough. So I can't wait to hear the replay to capture some more nuggets and then seeing where that takes me. How can listeners connect with you?
Oh, yeah. So listeners can go to bit.ly. So that's bit.ly /period hyphen empowerment. So bit.ly /period hyphen empowerment. You can connect with me there. There's a wonderful freebie there that listeners can have access to. It's my 5 tips for positively powerful periods. So you can have access to that. You can get my email address. We even have a Facebook group that people may be interested in joining as well. So yeah, so I would love for listeners to connect.
Awesome, awesome. And I'm going to also include it in the show notes. And so they're going to B as in boy, IT.ly /period hyphen empowerment. And you
Yes.
get a free guide, 5 tips for positively powerful periods. This is amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. And we got a schedule for you to get back.
Yeah.
And so to all my listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for your contribution to helping more women choose joy. And based on this episode, actually being able to embrace their sacred moon cycle and have positively powerful periods. And so your freedom lies in your decision to say yes to what you want, yes to who you are, and yes to what you stand for. So will you say yes to shifting the narrative about our moon cycles and how sacred those really are? Thank you for joining, and until next time, toodles.